Episode 2 opens with the murmur of a crowd and soft beeping that carries over the air. As the camera fades in, we're treated to a broad cavern filled with people, all waiting patiently in line to board a well-used rustic train. Periodically, a person or a group of people are stopped by an Legion guard as a rudimentary security check. Shuffling along in line are two figures hidden under nondescript winter cloaks, who the camera dips down to focus on. When these figures approach the nearest ticket gate, one of the guards halts them and asks the leading of the two figures their name. The figure raises her head, revealing Cinder, who is keeping a stony, stoic face as she replies, "Ember Harvest." She presents the man with forged credentials, and as he sorts through them, he asks the intent of their travel. Cinder answers calmly, "Just like everyone else, moving in with family and mantle during the dark season." The man doesn't think much of it until he looks at the second set of papers. His brow creases before rising past his hairline. Wait a minute. There's an imperceptible twitch to Cinder's eye, ready to spring an attack, when the man continues. "Steve? Is that you?" The guard looks up to the second cloaked figure, who slings a hand over Cinder's shoulder confidently as they approach. "You know it," the figure answers. We get a peek under the hood, and we see the face of the ground crew member at the end of Volume 6. Cinder's face is stony as the two men shake hands, and the guard excitedly says, "Son of a bitch, how you've been? Last I heard you were still stationed in Mistral, right?" Steve waves a hand in the air dismissively. "Yeah, but I got bumped up to a refueling hub out here in the Outlands." He pulls Cinder in closer to his side, very affectionately, which Cinder is surprised by. "Excited to spend the Solstice Festival with my better half here. I've already put in for leave." Cinder very quickly slaps on a forced, affectionate grin to keep up the appearance, while the guard huffs in amusement at the comment. "You and about 1,000,000 others. Better hope you signed up for that soon enough. That's a busy time slot. I'm never letting you live down that whole court reservation thing." Steve laughs, then groans. "Never will I?" The guard hands back their papers and points to Cinder. "You keep this guy out of trouble. He's a magnet for it." Much more composed, though the strain still under her eyes, Cinder smiles with a polite laugh. "Don't I know it? I know just how to handle him." Behind their backs, where Cinder and Steve are holding each other, she squeezes the man's side with her nails, causing him to flinch. The guard steps aside and lets them through. "You two have a safe trip." While he's watching them walk away, the guard's brows furrow. He raises a hand to measure himself, lifts it up a little bit higher to the height of actual Steve, and then lowers it down to the height of the Steve he had just met. Blinking to himself in confusion, he shakes his head and returns to his duties. We quickly montage through Cinder and Steve scanning their tickets and boarding the train. Cinder borderline dragging him by the wrist as they find a quiet seat near the back of an empty car. Shoving Steven into a seat, Cinder glares down at her and hisses, "What was that?" Steven's face immediately becomes deadpan, his mannerisms evaporating as he settles back into the seat with an annoyed shrug. "You're the one that told us to use him." Behind him, in the train's car window, his reflection turns around to look at Cinder with a roll of the eyes, taking on the appearance of Milcha Malachite. "So bossy, even when she gets what she wants, she's never happy." Steve nods in agreement. Cinder scowls. "Because you stabbed him, and he had the transfer codes we needed." Steve rolls his head against the seat. "How are we supposed to know that?" Milcha tacks on, "Not like you were sparing people either." Cinder's glare only deepens. "Reading minds is your whole thing." Milcha lets out a groan. "Ugh, not this again." And Steve levels a glare in return. "We're not mind readers, that's not how it works." "Well, you could have mentioned that sooner than after killing our easy ticket into the city," Cinder hisses, only to be met with the unified voice of Melanie and Milcha. We did. Malachite takes over the singular voice after that. "Don't blame us when you didn't pay attention. We didn't get Steve's memories, we got Steve. That was Steve." Growling, Cinder twists away, coughing lightly into her fist as she does. She wipes away a small trickle of black liquid from her lips and mutters, "You're impossible." Milcha stares at Cinder unimpressed. She should, be looking in a mirror when she says that. Malachite nods in agreement with an audible, "Uh-huh." Sighing, Cinder turns back to the only girl she can see. "Well, drop him. He's useless now." Putting a finger to her lips, Malachite thinks about it for a moment before replying with a shrug, "Sure, whatever." His posture shifts ever so subtly, and Steven's face begins to blur and melt, sloughing off in a distorted wave before evaporating completely, leaving only Malachite's face behind. It was starting to get crowded anyway. Cinder watches this happen with curiosity veiled in disdain. More people begin to enter the same car as them, and after a beat she sits down next to Malachite and crosses her arms. We can't take any more risks like that. Malachite begins to file her nails, stealing a glance over at Cinder. You mean you can't? Malachite's face hardens. After Roman dies, we couldn't care less what happens. A scoff from Cinder turns into a cough, and once again she covers her lips. You need to reach him first, and considering who he's going to be dealing with, that's going to need more than some hastily forged passports. Malachite leans away with an offended glare. Our forgeries are quality? Mom taught us the best tricks. For street trash? Maybe, but not for high security clearance. Cinder replies. Malachite shakes her head and checks her nails over. Whatever. They got us this far, didn't they? What actually is the plan, anyway? Cinder turns to look at a political poster plastered to the inside of the train, advertising an active political campaign called the Happy Huntresses. Relaxing back into her seat, Cinder replies, There's a thread I think I can pull on. We cut to Nora, handcuffed and sitting on a bench with the rest of RWBY Jr. Kern in the prison transport, playing with a loose thread from a piece of clothing. Beside her, Ruby is turned around on the bench, arching up on her knees trying to get a better look out the incredibly narrow window of the transport. She becomes increasingly frustrated, turning around and falling into the seat. Man, I can't see anything. Weiss shrugs. Atlas really isn't anything special. She trails off as a shadow blocks out the window. A truly massive cargo ship eclipses the view. Weiss leans forward with an arched brow and follows the path of its lumbering movement. That's odd, she says, her face now almost completely pushed up against the small window pane. Blake asks, What's up? And Weiss replies, That hauler is moving towards the military docks. She looks down to the city below. Huh, she murmurs and can be seen counting under her breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Yang joins her and looks down at what's below. In a massive series of darkened, seemingly abandoned facilities, other freighters lie dormant. Is something the matter? Weiss, worried, replies, I don't know. That ship was the Empress of Atlas. Then pointing down below, that's the Duty of Vale, that's the Waters of Mistral, and the others, I've never seen that many at dock before. That's almost all of them. Ruby asks, Is that bad? Weiss, still looking, only responds, I don't know. John watches the exchange solemnly before addressing the whole group. So, what are we going to tell Ironwood about Argus? The others in the cabin begin to shift uncomfortably, but Yang leans back with a shrug. What's there to tell? The pipsqueak in charge tried to flee, and her troops weren't exactly fans. Ruby's face goes pensive to match John's. I think we all know it's a little more complicated than that. You don't just inspire a mutiny every day, you know? Crow cuts in from the other end of the transport. Don't worry, James will understand. Yang's not wrong about Cordovan. The mutiny wasn't just you, Ruby. Mutiny? All eyes turn to the last occupant of the transport, a relatively normal-looking man who's been locked up in a standing restraint with wheels and a human muzzle. It's actually a loose thread of his clothing that Nora was, and still is, pawing at. Wow, you sound like a bunch of serious folks. Roman scoffs in amusement. Believe me, they're more like clowns. Which earns him an elbow in the ribs from Crow. Ren raises a brow at the man. What did you do to get so restrained? The man shrugs as best he can. They got me on a public indecency charge. 1 minute I was peeing in an alley. Next thing I know, I'm here. I mean, what else did they expect me to do? Almost everyone's face twists in disgust, Nora flinching away from the string she'd been playing with like it was burning hot. And Weiss becomes the only one to answer. Use a bathroom? The man sags with a sigh. Oh, but it was so far away. Everyone stares at him in bafflement. Before anyone can add anything further, the transport lands. Outside, we find Winter, standing on a landing pad outside of Atlas Academy's processing center, a small section of the security wing of the academy. Her face is uncharacteristically worried, but that quickly changes to a masked professionalism when Penny lands nearby, and the other members of Strike Team 32 come walking out of the prison transport. Winter spares them each a professional nod, though Penny's excitable waving threatens a smile on Winter's face. Clover, CL, and Flint go about leading RWBY Jr. Kern out onto the landing pad. Weiss is the first to notice Winter and the first to call her name. Winter remains stoic, but addresses Weiss, saying they'll discuss things such as Weiss fleeing the kingdom later. For now, she fixes Crow with a glare and says the two of them need to have a chat with Ironwood, a notion that's seconded by Clover as he walks over and hands her the relic. She takes it with a note of curiosity before returning her look to Crow. Crow locks eyes with Winter, and after a beat, Crow asks, "I take it you know?" Winter scowls at him. "I've known." Crow rolls his eyes at the attitude. "Good to see you haven't changed." "They know too." Winter's stoicism falters, surprise and a little sadness on her face when she scans back over the group, especially when she looks at Weiss again. Her eyes harden though when she sees Roman and Neo. "Even the criminals?" Crow offers up a sardonic smile. "Especially the criminals." Winter's glare doesn't falter, instead she straightens up her posture. "I see. Then I suppose we all need to see the General." There's a beat of quiet before Clover asks, "So, should I uncuff them?" Winter replies with a succinct, "Yes," but quickly isolates Roman and Neo. "Except for those two." Another pause, and she can't resist a small smile as she adds, "And Crow." Crow stares at her dumbfounded. "Really?" And we settle into a moment with all of RWBY, Junior, Roman, Neo, Crow, Winter, Clover, Penny, Ciel, Neon, and Flint riding silently up the building, emphasizing the height of their climb with how long the ride is. Breaking the silence is John, who awkwardly says, "So, is it a bad time to mention I need to use the restroom?" Several uncomfortable eyes turn to him. Eyes then move over to Neo as she quickly moves her hands in sign language. Without missing a beat, John adds, "Oh, Neo has to go too." Neo nods in approval before doing a double take and staring at the boy in confusion. We jump to the top floor where the elevator dings and the whole party steps off. From there, it's a short walk across an atrium to Ironwood's office. This content and the rest of the content on Celtic Phoenix is brought to you by the wonderful people supporting the channel through Patreon. For just $1 or more, you can gain access to the Tundra Discord server, where you can interact with me and a whole host of my fellow internet colleagues, such as the other members of Team Frostbite and the Team Jacked podcast. Become a part of our regular bad fanfiction nights that happen every Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time by joining our chat and adding your commentary to the reading. You can also join by becoming a member of the Celtic Phoenix YouTube channel, with the additional bonus of gaining access to a bunch of sweet emoticons during every one of our streams, such as the Team Jacked podcast, which airs every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But if either of those are too much for you, you can always subscribe to the channel, enable alerts, like this video, and share it around to all your friends. Thank you all so much for watching, and we now return you to your regularly scheduled fixing. Inside the office, we find Ironwood, standing at his desk, poring over documents until the door is opened and the combined cast enter. He smiles at first, but frowns seeing the significantly larger number of people. As he steps out from around his desk, Winter, Clover, and Penny drift to his side as Flint, Neon, and Ciel take up positions at the back of the room next to the door. Winter very pointedly places the relic on Ironwood's desk where it hovers peacefully in the air for everyone to see. Ironwood's face is a mixture of exhaustion, surprise, and a hint of disappointment. "Crow, it's good to see you again. Though, when Winter messaged me to expect extra guests, this isn't quite what I was expecting." Crow offers a wry smile in return. "With a group like this, you can't really expect anything normal." Ironwood appraises the group. "I see. How much do they know exactly?" Crow shrugs back. "Believe it or not, they figured out most of what was going on all their own, and after we found the old man..." Ironwood lights up, his back straightening like a heavy burden had just become that much lighter. "You found Ozpin. He's here?" For the first time in the conversation, RWBY speaks up with a meek, "Yeah, kinda, but, Unfortunately, it's drowned out by Ironwood's enthusiasm as he walks to the crew, scanning them over. With only two boys in the group, he naturally lingers on Ren and John, with John slowly taking up most of his focus. Both boys are noticeably uncomfortable, especially when Ironwood asks, "Oz?" between the two of them. This is when a pair of cuffed hands, and the body they're attached to, lean into frame, Roman giving Ironwood an awkward smug smile and a wave. "Hey there, James, it's been a while." The light in Ironwood's eyes die, and he leans back in borderline disgust. He turns to Crow. "You're joking." Crow doesn't have a chance to answer as RWBY steps forward, finding her confidence as she replies, "No, he's not. Roman Torchwick is Ozpin's new host." Ironwood glares at Roman before looking back to RWBY. "He sounds nothing like Oz." Roman chimes in quickly, "And I'm happy to keep it that way, thank you very much." RWBY winces but offers Ironwood a sympathetic smile.
Ozpin and him have had a falling out. We haven't heard from the professor in a while. But he is in there. We've talked to him. Ironwood meets Ruby's eyes before turning to Crow, who again shrugs. I don't know, James. Is this how it works? Did you meet Ozpin before, well, the last time? With a sigh, he pinches his brow and looks at Roman and Neo. You'd have to ask Glinda. This is uncharted waters for us. We'll need to figure out what to do with you and your sidekick. Roman grows cross. Partner. Which only further irritates Ironwood. Partner. Walking up to his desk, he turns to address the full team, giving them a kinder nod. Misgivings aside, I'll consider all of you being here a windfall. Pressing a button, a holographic screen appears in the middle of the room, displaying one of the crabs from before. I've been informed you've already encountered our current problem. The Grimm are getting bolder. Normally, they sequester themselves to warmer underground habitats like the mines, rarely striking out to the surface because of the cold, but more and more they're taking risks. They're becoming a problem and people are starting to notice. We've been managing to keep them at bay, in large part thanks to the efforts of Penny and her support team. Morale is high when people know the Defender of Mantle is out there keeping them safe. Penny hops in place with a cheery smile. My team contributes just as much as I do, General. Support team doesn't do them justice. In the background, Neon and Flint give each other a proud, stealthy fist bump. Ironwood's tired face grows a warm smile. Of course. How could I be so callous? Ruby looks at the Crab Grimm, which is joined by a few smaller types of Grimm in the projection, her face drawing with concern. So, what are you planning to do about the Grimm? It may surprise you, but not much, he replies, tapping a few keys on his desk. For now, we only need to hold them off long enough to get our actual plan in motion. The Grimm hologram blinks out, replaced instead with a lumbering mass of rock and metal. Amity Arena, now fitted with a large tubular construction that juts out the bottom spike of rock. John steps up next to Ruby, his brows furrowing with confusion and a barely suppressed wince. Amity? The rest of the crew begin to crowd in around it. Ironwood looks at the projection, eyes narrowing as he begins to explain. After the disaster at Amity, after Beacon, and after losing Oz, we were rudderless. I realized that were we to wait for Ozpin to reappear, it may already be too late, and another threat may come down on us, one we wouldn't be able to recover from. If anything, the attack on Haven only further proved me right. Sitting idle waiting for Ozpin's plans to come to fruition isn't enough. I needed to give us another option just in case. He begins to pace the room, circling the crew in the hologram, missing the uneasy looks on our heroes' faces when he mentions Ozpin's plans. This was my solution. The High Resonance Particle Neutralizer, or Harpoon for short. It is an energy weapon theoretically capable of evaporating anything it comes into contact with. The hologram pulls back and depicts the Harpoon in orbit over Remnant, hovering over an uninhabited portion of land and firing. By placing it in low orbit, we could have the capability of neutralizing any major threat on the planet. All we would need to know is where it is, and with a push of a button, we completely remove it from play. Ironwood reaches his desk and presses a key, swapping over to a close-up depiction of what the laser does to living cells on a molecular level. Salem may be immortal, but I'm willing to wager complete molecular disassembly might test her limits. Looks are shared between the crew, ranging from awe to discomfort to downright anxiety. Blake asks the obvious follow-up question. And if we assume Salem dies, what would you do with this afterwards? Ironwood throws her an understanding smile. World domination, of course. Looks of horror begin to ripple through the room. That is until Ironwood gives a dry, tired laugh. Sorry, gallows humor. No, nothing so nightmarish. In fact, quite the opposite. I hope to use Harpoon to cut out the nightmares from our world entirely, locate each and every other pool of Grimm we can, and burn it all away, leaving only remnants safe for humanity. He offers a comforting smile to Blake and Neon. All of humanity. The hologram zooms back out to the basic schematic of the station. Crow marvels at it. You'd need a whole kingdom to make something like this. It's been a struggle to keep it under wraps. Especially with the embargo, resources have been tight, and it's led to some problems with the Round Table. Ones that are only getting more imposing on the development of Harpoon. Leaning his back against his desk, Ironwood's demeanor loses any levity it has left, leaving only exhaustion and grim determination. I've already come to the conclusion that, before the Harpoon is even finished, I'll need to invoke the title of Architect to see it through and end Salem once and for all. Of our protagonists, only Crow and Weiss react, the former with concern and the latter with clear alarm. The Architect? Weiss balks. The rest of the crew are simply confused, and Yang turns to Weiss to ask, what's the big deal? Weiss stares uneasily at Ironwood as Crow explains. It's the ruler of pre-war Mantle. Controlled everything. I thought Atlas got rid of that. Winter chimes in diplomatically. It's a foundational corner of the Round Table Code meant strictly for emergency powers. Weiss shifts uncomfortably to look at her sister. How can you say that so calmly? He's talking about making himself a dictator. Winter closes her eyes. Because I trust him to do what's right. Ironwood interjects, softening his tone as an olive branch. It would only be temporary. Just long enough to mobilize everything Atlas has to finish Harpoon, locate Salem, and eliminate her. If we're smart, we can accomplish the first two at the same time. Regardless, after she's been dealt with, I will resign from my post. If saving the world means the end of my career, I'm at peace with that. Everyone in the room looks at him with mixed levels of trepidation, despite his words sounding genuine. No one offers to add to the conversation, too lost in thought or stuck in shock, and Ironwood recognizes this. With the final recall of all of our forces and the completion of the Harpoon, we're optimistic we'll be able to go on the offensive in about 4 months' time. RWBY winces when he mentions the recall of Atlas forces, shuffling forward awkwardly as she says, About that, on our way here, Argus almost collapsed. The walls went down and the Atlas forces decided to stay and defend it. At least that's what we think happened. It was kinda hectic when we left. John adds on, casting his eyes to the floor. We did everything we could to help, but we had to leave or else things would have only gotten worse. A pall is cast over the room. It's clear the news is landing on Ironwood like a lead weight, but he weathers it with a confident posture, asking, Worse how? RWBY nods to the relic on his desk. We learned from Ozpin. The relics attract the Grim. We thought it'd be safe behind Argus's defenses, but we were wrong. Ironwood looks tiredly to the relic, the wheels in his head turning, and it's clear he doesn't quite like the implications. Winter coughs into her hand. Sir, the forces at Argus were not due to arrive for several more weeks. I believe they were one of the lowest priorities on the recall schedule. There is more than enough time to re-establish contact and ascertain the nature of this decision they're describing before Harpoon reaches completion. There may be some extenuating circumstance pertaining to leadership. Closing his eyes, Ironwood processes the information and reopens them. Do so. It'd be ideal if we could convince the personnel to return to us, but we're getting the technology and research notes they were working on. Winter nods and has already started to issue orders through her scroll. Ironwood looks back to the crew, glaring briefly at Roman. Did Ozpin tell you anything else? Anything that might help us? RWBY looks over to Roman, then back to the relic. No. Not really, no. Just the Grim thing. She winces. Which isn't really helpful? There is an almost imperceptible ripple through RWBY Junior Kern as disquieted glances are exchanged, an unspoken question lingering between all of them. Ironwood accepts the news with a solemn sigh, crossing his arms behind his back and approaching the windows of his office. The important thing is that the relic is with us now, safe and secure. He doesn't stay there long, lost in thought only a minute before walking back to his desk and plucking the relic from it. He approaches RWBY, handing it to her. She accepts it, but is clearly confused. You're giving it to me? He smiles warmly. Opening Atlas's vault will take some time to prepare. But for now, I can think of no safer hands than the ones that saw it get here safely. Looking up, he addresses everyone else as well. My plan is ambitious, and I can understand where there may be misgivings about some of the steps. That said, I won't pressure any of you into being party to it against your will. But I can thank you for what you've already done. He smiles broadly. You've come a long way to get here, and I'm happy to lodge you all in the dorms to gather your strength. We can discuss whether or not you want to be part of things once you've gotten your rest. Team 32, perhaps a brief tour of the academy is in order. He motions to the 4 team members, and Penny jitters with excitement as they salute him. Yes, sir, General! She turns to RWBY and Junior and chirps. Right this way, friends! The 11 file out of the room, with Crow, Roman, and Neo beginning to follow after, only for Ironwood to stop them. Not you 3. Crow, I'll see you to one of the teachers' quarters myself. He then looks to Roman and Neo. As for you 2, there's a personal suite here that should be more than suitable for you, and a contingent of guards to ensure that. Roman and Neo both roll their eyes, completely absent of surprise. Oh, a suite! How nice of you to gild ourselves. Wait, it's where Oz usually stayed, isn't it? Ironwood only responds by motioning to Winter and Clover, who lead the disgruntled Roman and Neo away. Roman mutters, typical, as he's pulled away. Crow and Ironwood follow them out, but instead of heading down the stairs immediately like Crow, Ironwood watches from atop the staircase, stoically. Crow turns around, confused, as Ironwood steps up to him and deactivates the handcuffs he'd been stuck in all meeting. I meant it when I said it was good to see you. Crow, still confused, shrugs. Yeah. Before Ironwood slowly and awkwardly pulls him into a tight hug. Crow is unsure what to do at first before rolling his eyes and hugging Ironwood back in support. We then cut to Penny and her team excitedly montaging Team RWBY and Junior through a guided tour of Atlas Academy's many locales, listing off a litany of facts and background details about their construction and purpose. Periodically, Flint and Neon will chime in with color commentary about some of the less scrupulous things that occur around the Academy, while CL is always quick to get the tour moving again to keep them all on schedule, though she fails to elaborate on what the schedule is when prompted by Blake. As the tour montages on, it's clear our protagonists are getting more and more exhausted, be it from the day's events or Penny's overwhelming exuberance. The tour comes to a screeching end as Penny proudly declares, "And here is," only to be cut off as Ren groans. "Just take us to our rooms, please." There's a beat of silence before Penny finishes, "The dorm rooms!" All at once, the tired teens deflate, Nora even passing out completely as they do. Penny opens her mouth to speak again before CL steps forward and says, "No time for chit-chat, Penny. We need to retire to our own dorms or we'll be late to roll call in the morning." Penny, still mid-speaking motion, changes her approach, swinging an arm in excitement. "Then I suppose I will see you all in the morning. I'm so excited to have you guys here. It'll be just like Beacon. I think." She waves them goodbye and continues to do so as CL drags her away, with Neon and Flint waving their own goodbyes before following afterwards. The two exhausted teams are left in the corridor, staring after them. After a moment, Weiss tiredly asks, "Can someone lift Nora?" Earning a chorus of "No!" from everyone, and a "She'll be fine on the floor" from Ren. Cut to black, end of episode.